you just showed how to disrupt the US economy in 3 days. Like in a very hands-off, we had nothing to do with this kind of way. And it may be what we saw with TikTok is
Yeah.
US consumers don't care if their private data is going to China. They just want convenience and personalization. So if an app from China offers value and use, like US consumers have shown time and again, they're going to use it regardless. Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Show, the podcast that helps your business grow smarter by making AI approachable and actionable. My name is Paul Raitzer. I'm the founder and CEO of Marketing AI Institute, and I'm your host. Each week, I'm joined by my co-host and Marketing AI Institute Chief Content Officer, Mike Kaput, as we break down all the AI news that matters and give you insights and perspectives that you can use to advance your company and your career. Join us as we accelerate AI literacy for all. Welcome to episode 133 of the Artificial Intelligence Show. I'm your host, Paul Raitzer, along with my co-host, Mike Kaput. This is our second episode. We are recording on January 27th. So it is Monday morning, 10:50 a.m. Eastern Time, January 27th. NVIDIA's stock continues to go down, which we're going to explain why in a moment. So if you didn't listen to episode 132, just a quick recap. Normally we do one weekly episode that recaps the previous week's news. Last week's news was so crazy that we decided to do this over two episodes. So I guess you could think of episode 132 as part one, episode 133 as part two. So we are continuing on with the major news from last week. This episode is brought to us by the AI Mastery Membership Program. This is our 12-month membership program that includes quarterly classes like Ask Me Anything sessions, generative AI mastery classes, trends briefings. And then we announced, and if you listened to episode 132, you heard us talk about this, the AI Literacy Project, where we announced some major changes to our AI Mastery Membership Program, including, as of now, the Piloting AI and Scaling AI course series are bundled into the membership. And then in spring of this year, we are going to be launching a new AI-powered learning management system and user experience, expanding courses and professional certificates, and then a new turnkey AI Academy solution for businesses. And so we're going to launch the AI Fundamentals course series, which is kind of like AI 101 for all knowledge workers, new Piloting AI and Scaling AI courses, a new weekly Gen AI app course series that we're really excited about, AI for industries, AI for departments. So just a ton coming, and it's all going to be built into that same AI Mastery membership. So if you join now, you will get first access to all the new stuff as it's coming online this spring. You can go to smarterx.ai and just click on education, and it's right there. Just look at AI Mastery Membership in the dropdown, or smarterx.ai//AI mastery. We'll put the links in the show notes if you want to just click on the link in the show notes. And there is a promo code you can use, POD100, POD100, that will get you $100 off the membership. And then also a quick reminder, we have open submission right now to speak at MAICON 2025. That is taking place October 14th to the 16th in Cleveland. So you can register too. Registration is open. We're expecting probably north of 1,500 people last year. I think we had, or next year, this year, I think we had 1,100 last year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So in Cleveland last year. So this year we're thinking 1,500 plus. We'll see. I mean, it's hard to predict these things in the event world, but it's looking like it's going to be another amazing event. This is our 6th year again. So if you want to speak, get those applications in soon. It's a rolling basis. So as phenomenal applications come in, we'll reach out to people and get them added to the agenda. But I think last year we had, I don't know, it was like close to 200 or more submissions to speak. And there obviously aren't that many slots. So get those submissions in early. Just go to maicon.ai. That's maicon.ai and click on submit your speaker application. There's a button right there on the homepage. Okay, Mike, the thing that was all the rage, I think it started on Thursday. I don't remember when this started taking over the news cycle, at least in Twitterverse, but all that I saw all weekend was this. I listened to probably 3 podcasts about it. I've read probably 20 articles about it, and I have been watching NVIDIA's stock plummeting this morning as a result of it. So let's talk about DeepSeek, which also is the number one app in the App Store, I think, as of Sunday night. So it's everywhere. I've never seen anything quite take off like this.
Yes. So DeepSeek is a Chinese AI lab that is sending shockwaves through Silicon Valley because it's had some breakthroughs that are challenging some fundamental assumptions about AI development. So DeepSeek has actually created AI models that rival or surpass top US based or created systems while spending a fraction of the time and money on these models and releasing them in an open fashion so others can use and build on them. So, one of the company's models, DeepSeek V3, was built using only about, they claim, 2,000 specialized NVIDIA chips, which is compared to 16,000 or more chips that major US companies are using. Even more striking is the cost. DeepSeek claims it spent just $6 million on computing power to train the model. And the model they say is comparable to something like GPT 4.0. So it challenges the closed models, cost only $6 million to train, which is literally 1/10 of what someone like Meta invested in their latest AI technology. And the system can match the leading chatbots out there, apparently, in answering questions, solving logic problems, writing code. I mentioned it's open, so developers can freely access and build on it. And as a result, Paul, like you mentioned, DeepSeek recently overtook ChatGPT to become the top rated free application in the App Store in the US. Now, this also happened because or despite of US government restrictions on sending advanced AI chips to China. So rather than hindering progress, these constraints may have forced Chinese engineers to develop more efficient approaches. Now, on the heels of DeepSeek V3, DeepSeek also released R1, which is an open source competitor to OpenAI's advanced reasoning models, specifically O1 and then eventually O3, which is coming out. Now, R1 actually costs like 90% less to use than O1. And this is kind of further baffling everybody as to how this company is able to create such powerful AI at such a low cost. So it's raising a bunch of uncomfortable questions, which is why you're hearing about it a lot. So if what they say is true, and that's a big if we'll dive into, that really calls into question how much money is required to actually build AI, how many advanced chips are required to build advanced AI systems. Have all these big labs just lit money on fire and way over engineered this when there's an easier way. And then also the emergence is having people worried about China's AI capabilities. Former Google CEO Eric Schmidt previously estimated China was 2 to 3 years behind the US in AI development, but now acknowledges they have caught up. So, Paul, a bunch of different angles here, but let's first talk about what DeepSeek says they have achieved. How credible are these claims? How likely is it that they were actually able to achieve this level of performance this fast for this cheap?
I have no idea. I mean, so I've been trying to track this as closely as possible, look at all the different angles, listen to the different players involved. There are some who think they just innovated that the U.S. reducing the amount of chips they're allowed to have just drove innovation, and they found out they built more efficient algorithms to do this training more efficiently. And there are some who are very strongly opinionated that they're lying and there's no way they actually trained it this efficiently. And they probably have way more illegal NVIDIA chips than they're saying they have. And they're never going to disclose that they do because that's illegal. And they are certainly a fair amount of people who think they probably stole the data and illegally trained the models on US model outputs. Like, obviously we have no idea, like we have no inside knowledge on this. There are lots of opinions flying around. Whatever the truth ends up being, there is a lot of concern in Silicon Valley at the moment and in the US stock market that they may have actually just found more efficient ways to do this. I think there's probably little debate that they leveraged US innovation to do this. That is pretty much guaranteed. Shortcut their path to success by leveraging what the US had done. Um, but throughout the weekend, the app kept climbing the app store, which is hilarious. Like I don't even know, like people who like what would you know to do with this? Like I don't know how it climbed. Like, and even that there was some question about whether it was like bots and just paid things that was getting it to the top. And then there was questions about, is this like a psych op by the
Mm,
Chinese government to actually like just mess with the US stock market? I don't know. It gets really wild, really deep. But we referenced on 132 at start, and we referenced at the beginning here. Nvidia's stock is like crashing this
yeah.
morning as a result of this. The reason is Nvidia's value is based on the belief that we are going to keep building massive data centers filled with millions of Nvidia chips to not only train more powerful, generally capable models, but to run the inference on these models when all of us consumers use AI apps and devices. So NVIDIA's entire future, at least in the stock market, is based on this belief that we're going to keep building, we're going to keep needing millions of chips. Well, this puts into question, do we really need all these data centers and infrastructure that we just got a $500 billion for Stargate and we got trillions more coming? Like, is that all gonna be necessary?
Hmm.
So, that's why NVIDIA's stock sort of, like, just dropped because Wall Street doesn't like uncertainty, and this is very uncertain, like, there's way more questions than answers. Um, there are risks, there's massive risks here, so, like, one, these models, if you ask them about, things related to, like, democracy or Tiananmen Square, things like that, like, they just won't answer. Like, they're obviously, in some ways controlled by they're from a company within China, so they have to adhere to the policies of the government. The data is stored on Chinese servers, I believe, like that I saw something last night about, like, where is this data going? It's you're sending personal data, whatever you put in, whatever the inputs and outputs are of the model, like, you're, sending that through the app if you're using the app. Um, but, again, like there's differing opinions. So we had Satya at Davos said to see the DeepSeek new model, it's super impressive in terms of both how they have really effectively done an open source model that does this inference time compute and is super compute efficient. We should take the developments out of China very, very seriously. But then Satya also tweeted, I mean, I mispronounced this. Jevons paradox strikes again. So like this, so the idea that um, because something became cheap that we aren't going to need like the data centers. So his exact tweet was Jevons paradox strikes again. As AI gets more efficient and accessible through things like DeepSeek, we will see its use skyrocket, turning it into a commodity we just can't get enough of. So what he's saying is Nvidia stock should actually be going up. Is the
Mm,
basic like interpretation here that because something was made cheaper, that there actually will be an increasing demand of it. So Wikipedia, because it's the quickest thing I can get in economics, the Jevons paradox or Jevons effect occurs when technological progress increases the efficiency with which a resource is used, reducing the amount necessary for any one use, but the falling cost of use induces increases in demand enough that the resource use is increased rather than reduced, meaning we're going to need more data centers. We're going to need more NVIDIA chips. So the stock market is making the assumption, oh, we won't need as many NVIDIA chips or data centers. What Satya is saying is, no, that's not the case. This is a
mm,
Jevons paradox. Like it'll actually increase. We'll need more as we go. Um, and then just like to drill home the significance of this, there's a information article that said Meta scrambles after Chinese AI equals its own upending Silicon Valley. And so I'm just going to read a couple of quick excerpts here because I think this gives the mentality of, and again, this is like 5 days old. That just happened, like Thursday or whatever. That
right.
it's all like, so it said leaders, including AI infrastructure director Matthew Oldman, have told numerous colleagues they are concerned that the next version of Meta's flagship AI Llama won't perform as well as DeepSeek. Now, this is why I was kind of surprised Meta's stock was up today. Um, this month, Hangzhou based High Flyer Capital Management upped the ante by releasing another version of DeepSeek that you had mentioned. App developers can freely download DeepSeek or buy access to it through cloud based APIs. Researchers at OpenAI, Meta, and other top developers have been scrutinizing the DeepSeek model to see what they could learn from it, including how it manages to run more cheaply and efficiently than some American made models. Noam Brown, who we've talked about many times on the show, he tweeted, DeepSeek shows you can get very powerful AI models with relatively little compute. The article goes on to say even more surprising than the quality of DeepSeek's results was High Flyer's claim that developing it cost a fraction of the amount American competitors spent on developing similar models. a claim that various researchers have met with skepticism, underscoring the efficiency of its models. Highflyer also sells a cloud hosted version that is 17 to 27 times cheaper than OpenAI's comparable offerings.
Mm.
The arrival of DeepSeek is particularly galling to researchers at Meta because, like Llama, it is freely available for other developers to use with publicly accessible settings that control the model's behavior, a concept known as open weights. So this is really important because, as we talked about on the podcast last year, Zuckerberg's play was to undercut the market by making a free open source model. Well, he just got undercut by a Chinese company with a model that's better, based on this article, with than what Meta hasn't even released yet. So like their next model, there's concerns at Meta that this thing is not only more efficient, it's actually better than what they were going to release.
Yeah.
So the article says that they have researchers at leading American companies probably impressed with the results. Um, Highflyer may have taken some shortcuts to mimic already released models, including training its own models on answers from O1 and Llama. And then they said that managers and engineers from Meta, AI group and infrastructure team have started 4 war rooms to learn how DeepSeek works. 2 are mobilized to trying to understand how they lowered the cost of training and running DeepSeek. Meta wants to apply whatever they can learn. And then they said managers and engineers from Meta have started. Okay, and then there was 2 other war rooms dedicated to different elements of DeepSeek. So
Wow.
this is real. Like again, they don't know yet if they're being truthful in their research and what they're saying, and maybe there are some like larger issues at play here. But it seems like there's enough to this that it has AI research labs scrambling to figure out what is going on. And then you throw in the fact that it all of a sudden is number one in the app store, and now consumers are seeing and using this thing. It's like it took the world by storm. It's really crazy.
And it seems like one way or another, whether they have in fact found some breakthroughs to do this or are hiding something, there's a lot of money and interest in figuring that out because all of the investors, all the business models of these major players seem to be under threat from this, right?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do the math, but if I mean, Nvidia is a $3 trillion company. If they lost 14% market or value this morning, I mean, we're talking about a 400 to $500 billion market cap swing in 2 hours. Like
Right. Yeah.
it's a it's a massive economic impact.
So you
So
don't think there's some corporate espionage about to happen around
yeah,
things here?
that's 100%. So even if there wasn't something more nefarious at work here, you just showed how to disrupt the US economy
Mhm.
in 3 days. Like, in in a very hands-off, we had nothing to do with this kinda way. So even if it didn't come from that, you may now see future copycat things done where because what we and it may be what we saw with TikTok is
Yeah.
US consumers don't care if it's from China. Like they don't care if their private data is going to China or it's owned by some a holding company in China. They just want convenience and personalization. They want that experience. So if an app from China offers value and use like US consumers have shown time and again, they're going to use it regardless. So I don't know, man. It's heavy stuff. For a second episode we're recording in the same day, like, it hurts my brain to be trying to, like, process this, and I know we're only gonna talk more about it in the next topic.
Yeah, for sure. Because the second topic is pretty intimately related to this. It kind of zooms out from just this deep seek drama and looking at how some US based AI leaders are now speaking up louder than ever about the need for America to win the AI war against China. So, the most notable example of this is Alexander Wang, the founder and CEO at Scale AI, which is a major data platform company that's used by a lot of companies building AI, took out a full page ad in the Washington Post the day after President Donald Trump was inaugurated, titled literally, "Dear President Trump, America must win the AI war." This ad linked to a letter from Wang to Trump that is published on the Scale AI website, and it outlines a 5-point plan to maintain US leadership in AI. And while that is generally, leading all the countries, it's especially focused on China. Wang warns that the Chinese government, quote, outspends the US government by about 10 times on AI implementation and adoption. So his proposed strategy centers on a fundamental restructuring of how the US government approaches AI development. He says that there's a critical misalignment in current government spending where 90% of investments focus on algorithms, contrary to what's actually a best practice in the industry, which is allocating resources across three pillars: compute at about 60%, data at about 30%, and algorithms at about 10%. The plan also calls for 5 specific actions in the administration's first 100 days. Beyond realigning those AI investments, Wang advocates for building an AI ready workforce, with projections suggesting AI could create 50 million new jobs by 2030. He also emphasizes the need to modernize federal agencies' AI capabilities by 2027. And he notes that while the US government is the world's largest data producer, it's not effectively leveraging this advantage. And the proposal also addresses two critical infrastructure challenges: energy and regulation. He calls for an aggressive national energy plan to support AI's substantial power demands, while simultaneously advocating for a balanced regulatory framework that ensures safety without hampering innovation. So, Paul, it is not news that there's a brewing AI arms race between the US and China, but based on the DeepSeek news, it seems that this is now at the forefront of everyone's mind. Is the US falling behind? How critical is this scenario?
I don't know. I've seen a lot of charts in the last week or so on, how much China's built out in energy and infrastructure. Um, yeah, so you and I both read AI Superpowers by Kai-Fu Lee years
Yeah.
ago. I think anybody who wants to understand the dynamics here, because they are becoming very important and starting to become reality. So AI Superpowers, the subtitle is China, Silicon Valley, and the New World Order. Kai-Fu Lee was the former president of Google China, and now he runs a venture fund in China. Um, so he knows what he's talking about. And so he tweeted just yesterday, I think this was, in my book AI Superpowers, I predicted that US will lead breakthroughs, but China will be better and faster in engineering. Many people simplified that to be China will beat US, and many claimed I was wrong with Gen AI. With the recent DeepSeek releases, I feel vindicated.
Mm,
So it is exactly what he laid out in his book, that US will drive innovation. We will build the data centers. We will build the biggest models. We will have the breakthroughs in memory and reasoning and all these things. Like, that is what we do in America. And China will very quickly follow and improve on them. And that is what has always happened in innovation for decades. And he said AI was going to be no different. And the other thing that China has going for them is they don't have the civil rights around, like, privacy and data
mhm.
usage of civilians and things like that. So they're going to use all the data. One of the big question marks was always, would they allow a large language model to exist? Like, would they allow something that could talk about the actual history of Tiananmen Square? Like, would they let something like that exist? And the answer seems to be yes, that they will. And if they're going to do that, it definitely creates a whole lot of new wrinkles in this. I don't know what else to call it. I don't know if we have a better name for, like, US China war. I don't really like referring it to like that, but it is an AI war for sure,
Yeah.
and it's going to be fought on a lot of different levels. Um, and sometimes we're not going to know that that's what's happening, and we may find out years later that that's what things were and how it all played out. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, people listen to Wang. Scale AI is a very important company. They work. You can't even, like, step back and say, okay, so Alexander works with Sam Altman at OpenAI, but he doesn't like Elon Musk. Like, no, they all work with them. Like,
Yeah.
Meta uses them. I'm sure Elon uses them. Like, they're a critical component of the data infrastructure that trains these models. And so people do listen to him, and I think that I'm sure that this, letter to the president has been seen. And, I think there's elements of it that I certainly agree with. And I think it'll be fascinating to see how this all plays out. But this is going to be a major ongoing news thing. This is not going away. This is going to only grow in importance.
Yeah, I think we talked about a bit last year. There were all these scenarios where we could see AI becoming this like hot button political issue, and it kind
Yep.
of didn't really hit right away. But now this is
I saw
certainly
that.
one area.
I had the same thought last night when I was, like, scanning through, getting ready for today.
Yeah.
that we were saying, like, up until November, how, like, AI just didn't play a role in the election. It wasn't really talked about as a campaign item, and then day one, it's all that's talked about. Like, it is, like, I mean,
Yeah.
not all, there's obviously immigration, a bunch of other stuff going on, but it became very obvious day one, minute one, that AI was fundamental to the administration.
All right. And our third big topic for this episode. So, the World Economic Forum had their annual conference in Davos. On episode 132, we talked about a few interesting interviews with AI leaders. On this episode, we wanted to deep dive in a more formal way into one of them from Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei, because he made some pretty interesting predictions about AI's trajectory. He suggested that AI could surpass human intelligence by 2027. And of course, people started then quoting and asking questions of other AI leaders to respond to this. He actually revealed during this interview that his confidence about rapid AI advancement increased dramatically in recent months. While he previously maintained uncertainty about the timeline for transformative AI, he now says he is, quote, relatively confident that within the next 2 to 3 years, we will see AI systems that are, quote, better than us at almost everything. He also talked a bit about Anthropic's growth, their fundraising, and their immediate roadmap, indicating significant updates coming to Claude within coming months. But really, it's this 2027 prediction, Paul, that kind of got everyone's attention, because he also said society is going to need to fundamentally rethink how we organize our economy as AI becomes increasingly capable. He said there are a lot of assumptions we made when humans were the most intelligent species on the planet that are going to be invalidated by what's happening with AI. So, Paul, like, can you maybe walk us through what is he seeing that's leading him generally to make this prediction, and then even further accelerate his timeline?
Yeah, I don't it's interesting. I don't think he's accelerating his timeline really. Like,
Okay.
it's so if you go back to when was this? We talked about the Machines of Loving Grace article he wrote in, let's this is October 15th, 2024, episode 119 of the podcast.
Hmm.
So he had published this Machines of Loving Grace article where he had sort of like radical predictions for AI. And at that time, he talked about that what he calls powerful AI. He doesn't like AGI. He thinks it's kind of like a marketing term, so he refers to it as powerful. But he had said then, like he thought as early as 2026. So I don't know. He doesn't do many interviews, so I think in some ways this may just it may have gotten a lot of run because he was out at Davos World Economic Forum doing these interviews.
Mm.
But he said like could be 2026. For the purpose of this essay, we're looking at maybe 5 to 10 years, like anywhere in that realm, basically. So he historically tends to be quite vague. Like he's hard to pin down on exactly what he means by things and when exactly he thinks things are going to happen or why he thinks things are happening the way they're happening. He more than most, he speaks in pretty broad generalities, and he's hard to drill into specifics. So I found I always listen to what Dario has to say, but I think he often presents these outlandish scenarios and then basically says, like, "I have no idea what it means." Like, that's his general answer is like, "We don't know." Well, okay, why are you accelerating? If you're so worried about this, why are you accelerating development? Well, we think, it can be good, and we're gonna figure it out, and we're gonna build AI that figures out why the risks are and things like that. So, it's weird. I get unsettled listening to him, I think is, like, what
Mhm.
I'm trying to say. I think Anthropic is probably making breakthroughs. Like I said on episode 132, I think they're holding back right now for whatever the reasons. Maybe it's a safety thing. Maybe it's training run didn't work exactly how they wanted it to, but I think they have way more than they're saying they do, or that they're currently sharing with us. But I find interviews with him unsettling because he never seems to have answers to like, what does this mean? And he, more than most people, throws caution to the dangers of what they're doing and never has the answer to like what we're going to do about it, other than when we see the risk has emerged, we will solve for it. And so I don't know. Like, I listened to a couple interviews with him last week, and it's a lot of the same stuff. But this 2027 timeline. I think it's coming from something because we're now, what, 4 months removed, 3 months removed from when he did the Machines of Loving Grace thing,
Right.
and I do think that he thinks and that others think that we are very near significant advancements in AI, and I believe that. I don't know that he vocalizes it the best, um, but I think that he thinks that this is very real.
Yeah, on that note, and we've talked about it in previous episodes, you don't see a lot of the major leaders saying, whoa, 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 pump the brakes. This is slowing down a bit.
No, because they're all racing for the same funding. They're
Yeah.
all racing for the same influence. They all think that they're probably best situated to identify and solve for the risks. But I don't know. Like, I almost wonder if sometime this year or next year we don't start seeing much more collaboration between these players. Like, I think at some point Altman and Amodei, obviously, Amodei left OpenAI. I don't
Mm.
know what kind of terms Sam and Dario are on these days, but Dario took 10% of the staff with him when he left in 2021. I think at some point we really need Demis Hassabis and Dario Amodei and Sam Altman or whoever the lead engineer is at OpenAI. Like, these people need to be in a room talking about the reality of what if we do get to AGI or superintelligence by 2027.
Right.
They all talk about the need for some international council to exist and some body to, like, figure this out. I think they need to get together and figure this out. Like, they're the ones building the technology, and they're just hoping someone else comes along and solves for what happens as a result of the technology that they're all building.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, like, I don't know if something needs to happen for them to then get together. I can't imagine Elon Musk wanting to get in the room with Sam and some of the other guys, but
Right.
there's like 5 or 6 people in the world who are leading companies that are building something that they think changes society within 3 to 5 years, and they're not talking to each other that I'm aware of about what to do about that.
All right, let's dive into some rapid fire for this episode. The first up rapid fire topic is a provocative new benchmark that is called Humanity's Last Exam. And this is highlighting just how quickly AI is advancing and raising concerns in the process about our ability to measure its capabilities. So, this Humanity's Last Exam was released this week by researchers at the Center for AI Safety and Scale AI. Humanity's Last Exam is basically being billed as the most challenging test ever created for AI systems. It consists of roughly 3,000 questions spanning fields from analytic philosophy to rocket engineering. And each question is crafted by leading experts, some of whom were paid up to $5,000 per accepted submission. And these are just not typical test questions. They are specifically designed to push the boundaries of what AI can achieve, often matching or exceeding the difficulty of PhD level challenges. The creation of this test was spurred by an urgent problem. Existing AI benchmarks are becoming obsolete, and they're becoming obsolete very, very quickly because new models from OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, etc., have been consistently mastering graduate level tests. So researchers are kind of stuck trying to figure out even more difficult challenges. Now, right now, the most advanced AI models out there are struggling with this test. OpenAI's latest systems have scored the highest among those tested, but still only got an 8.3% accuracy. However, the test creator, Dan Hendricks, predicts these scores could surpass 50% by the end of the year. And that's a threshold that would suggest AI systems have become world class oracles capable of outperforming human experts across virtually any academic domain. Now, Paul, like, this is a pretty interesting name, seems like a little hyped up and wild, but definitely addressing like a real problem we're seeing. Like, how closely should we be watching model performance on this particular test?
Um, so I think these, like, super advanced tests, like the ARC AGI test, this
Yep.
one, I think they matter to the research labs a lot because they get to benchmark um, the overall potential and power of these models. My This has become like my soapbox thing, I think. Like, I wanna see the evals by profession. Like, I don't really care. Like, I assume this is gonna be achieved in the next 1 to 2 years. Like, I just anytime I see something like this, like, "Oh, we figured out a way to answer, like, questions we've never thought of, and it's not gonna be anywhere in the training data, and it's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be so hard. Humanity's last." And then, like, 12 months from now, somebody will have, like, done it, and it's like, "Oh, okay, like, well, now we're gonna do this one." What are we proving? Like, it
Right.
does at the end of the day, I wanna know how much of a writer's job can it do? How much of a doctor's job, a consultant's job, a psychologist's job? Like, I want the same energy doing evals of people's careers because that's what actually matters in the economy, is, like, when are we gonna get to the point where this thing can do 80% of an attorney's job?
Right.
Now we got a problem, and that's, like, that's the part where I think we're way closer to the answer to those kinds of questions being yes than most people want to accept. And so I want and maybe this is something like again, kind of like the literacy project. Part of the reason I did that was because we talked all last year about someone has to step up and do this. Like, we
Yep.
need to drive literacy across America and throughout the world. And it just wasn't happening. So I was like, all right, let's just do it. I almost feel like maybe this needs to, like, fit under the umbrella of the literacy project. It's like, somebody has to start doing this evals at the professional level, at the job level,
Yep.
and looking and saying, okay, this job is, like, within 12 to 18 months is going to achieve like 30 to 50% automation. Okay, what are we doing about it? Like, let's be proactive here. Let's not wait until we get to 2027 and these things have passed humanity's last exam and they can do 90% of the jobs. Like, I'm not saying that's gonna happen. I'm not like, don't quote me on like 90% of the jobs by 2027. I'm saying jobs are gonna be transformed. These things are
Hmm.
gonna increasingly do the tasks that make up the jobs, and no one's doing anything about it. Like, nobody's running evals on that, and nobody's, like, proactively reskilling and upskilling based on that, or telling us what all these amazing 50 million new AI jobs are gonna create. Like, I don't see it. I don't see 50 million new jobs being created by AI by 2027 or 2030. I would love for somebody to tell me what they're gonna be, or at least, like, directionally say what they're gonna be. Again, it's where Dario and Sam, they talk in these generalities, like, it's just gonna be okay. It always happens when we have general purpose technologies, like, new jobs come and it's gonna be amazing. No, it's not. It's not gonna happen that fast. Maybe 10 years from now we'll get there, but not in 3 years. So, until somebody lays out that plan for me, I have a really hard time believing that it's just gonna work out.
So this next topic is actually quite related to this because it's kind of looking at something like this, what you're talking about in practice, because we got news that OpenAI is reportedly developing a new AI system that aims to match the capabilities of expert software engineers. So this comes from the information, and they're reporting that this advanced coding agent is designed to handle complex programming tasks that typically require senior level engineering expertise. So, there's existing tools already like ChatGPT, other assistants like Copilot and GitHub that help with programming tasks. But this new agent is being designed to tackle really sophisticated challenges like code refactoring and system architecture. That's work typically performed by like high level, what they would call an L6 or senior staff engineer. So Sam Altman actually views this as crucial to the company's revenue targets. So they want to reach 1 billion daily active ChatGPT users. In the next year, they want to generate 100 billion in revenue by 2029. Those kinds of markets require them going after these types of jobs. So, like, Paul, I'm not a software engineer, but the reason I mentioned it's related to the previous topic is like, this is an example of at least one AI lab explicitly targeting a high level, highly paid knowledge work task. I mean, Zuckerberg's talked about this as well, that AI is going to replace mid level engineers. It seems like the impact on highly skilled jobs is like happening now. But to your point, we're not really preparing for this when they're telling us what the roadmap is.
Yeah. And so this, it's interesting as you were reading this, it made me think back to the quote I've mentioned many times on the podcast, from Automate This by Christopher Steiner, where he talked, and this is the book I read in 2012 that sort of like tipped me into like insane curiosity around AI and the future of
Mhm.
the world. His equation was the potential to disrupt plus the reward for disruption. So if you're going to automate jobs, if you're going to apply your ability to build these agents to take actual entire jobs, what is the most valuable job to an AI research firm? It is an engineer or an AI researcher. So the ones we're going to hear about, as you're pointing out, we are now hearing about. We have Meta, Zuckerberg telling us by the middle of this year they're going to have a mid-level engineer. We have OpenAI telling us they're going to build this. So what are you going to build first if you're capable of fulfilling an entire job of a human? You're going to build an AI researcher, an AI engineer, because the compound value of that engineer is massive, and it can
Mhm.
if it can work with other engineers, now you can build more stuff. So it's not saying the job of engineers goes away. It's saying like we can employ 1,000 of these super engineers, and we only need 100 or 200 or whatever human engineers to like manage these 1,000 or million and AI engineers.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the canary in the coal mine. Is that the right
Yeah.
saying? Yeah, like this is it. We build once we do this, once we've built the thing that's really complex, now what's stopping us from going and building the next thing that offers massive value? And so you start working from the top down of how much value can be created by building an AI version of a whole job or profession. Um, so it's this is my point. We're not going to get to the end of 2025 and have just replaced the need for humans to do all these jobs.
Right.
But you're going to start to see the highest value jobs where the AI now can do 90 to 95% of the work. Doesn't eliminate the profession, but it does dramatically change what that profession looks like when we have an AI accountant or an AI attorney or whatever it
Mhm.
is that can now do the majority of what that high performing human would do. So this is the stuff we're not modeling enough. People aren't talking about this enough. Economists just are ignoring this, which I just cannot comprehend. But they're not thinking about the reality of this and the impact on the economy or the impact on education, like as we think about the jobs for our kids and stuff. So yeah, it was so funny. Like I had no intention of like this being like the thread of this podcast episode. It just so happened that as you're going through these topics, they're all building on this same concept.
Yeah. All right. So Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg has announced that the company plans to spend 65 up to $65 billion this year on AI infrastructure, which is nearly double their spending from last year and well above Wall Street's expectations. So this investment includes construction of a new data center with more than 2 gigawatts of computing power. That's enough to cover a significant portion of Manhattan. They also plan to amass an arsenal of over 1.3 million GPUs by year's end. This would cement them as one of the largest buyers of NVIDIA chips. So, this comes, of course, just days after we have unveiled the $500 billion Stargate initiative, which is going to benefit OpenAI primarily. And Zuckerberg really just emphasized the strategic importance of the investment. He thinks 2025 is a defining year for AI and wants to expand Meta's AI assistant to serve more than 1 billion people by year end. So, Paul, like the big elephant in the room here is that this is like part of this is likely DeepSeek putting the fear of God into Meta, perhaps, but they also were probably going to be very aggressive with R&D regardless, and an infrastructure investment rather.
Yeah, I mean, this was happen it was just such a weirdly timed flex, like,
Yeah.
the day when everyone else is like, "Oh my god, Llama 4 just got surpassed, and they're gonna have to not release it," and
Yeah.
Zuckerberg's entire strategy was to undercut the market with open source models, and now China
Right.
just undercut him, and, like, he's tweeting a picture of Manhattan with, like, the size of their forthcoming data centers, like, it's like, I guess you're just doubling down right or wrong on this whole thing.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it's been in the works forever, and they already had this CapEx allocated for the year, the 60 some billion, but it was just so bizarre to, like, see that tweet or the threads or wherever he put it that this is what they're doing when everyone's like, "Dude, did Llama just get completely undercut?"
Right. Yeah, and you're spending more. And like you and I were talking about before the episode, there's no way to tell why some of these stocks are moving the way they do, but I don't understand how they're up a bit or
Yeah, I
more
did I'm
this
I'm
morning.
truly this is why I don't day trade. This is why I just
Yeah,
buy and
right.
hold, like, the stocks I really believe in. Because last week I said I was losing faith in Apple, and they're up 2.5%. I assume Meta would be down more than NVIDIA today, which is now down 17%. Jeez, oh man.
Yikes.
I am not looking at my retirement portfolio. I want to get off of here. And then Meta's up like 2%. I was like, what? Makes no sense.
All right. Our next update here this week is that Google has come out with a big update to Gemini 2.0 Flash Thinking, their experimental thinking model. The new model showcases some remarkable capabilities. It can process up to 1 million tokens of text, which is 5 times more than OpenAI's O1 model. It also has faster response times. It has achieved unprecedented scores on advanced math and science benchmarks. And what sets this release apart is really how Gemini 2.0 Flash Thinking goes about doing all these reasoning tasks. It actually explicitly shows its work, which makes its decision making process transparent to users. The model has already claimed the top spot for the time being on the Chatbot Arena leaderboard and leads in categories including hard prompts, coding, and creative writing. Now, what's interesting is, at least for the time being, it is also free. Google offers the model to anyone during its experimental beta testing phase in the Google AI Studio platform. So, Paul, I just look at something like 2.0 Flash Thinking, and I'm like, just have to appreciate how fast things are moving. Like, we just quickly got a more transparent thinking model. It's accessible, it's cheap. This is like such a change from 12 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, things have changed so dramatically. I do think some of what you just said, like, is kind of what I saw people over the weekend talking about with DeepSeek. Like,
Yep.
one of the most fascinating parts of DeepSeek is to see the reasoning process, and it's almost like people would say, like, it's like listening to a human's internal monologue, like
Mm,
the challenges it has, like, oh, the human wants this, oh no, I got to do this, and it's like debates with itself. So I think the more we see the underlying reasoning, because I think like O1 from OpenAI, if I'm not mistaken, like there's almost summarizes the reasoning. It's like, I
yeah, it
did this,
does.
I
Yeah.
did this, this, like DeepSeek, you truly see as those like the thoughts inside of a mind. It's like, okay, they're asking me for this, but if I give them this, then that's not going to answer their question. So I need to do, and it's like this is what it's doing in like milliseconds. And so I think we're going to learn a lot about how these models work the more exposed we are to the chain of thought that they're going through to create the output for us humans.
Hmm.
I think it's gonna be a really fascinating part of people actually starting to realize why 3 years ago you had Google engineers worried that these things were conscious. Like, when you start to really
Yeah.
see what they do, it feels very human, and it's very odd to have to separate yourself and realize that that's not actually what's happening, we don't think.
And interesting too, just I realize this is just an experimental model. Google obviously charges for a bunch of its AI stuff, but we even saw this with their like Google Workspace pricing for Gemini. Like, they are releasing stuff for not that much money and or free, because not they don't necessarily have to rely on these subscriptions to like power their business like someone like OpenAI might.
Yep, which is a very large advantage.
So the hits don't stop here for Google. They're having a great week as well with their Imagen 3 image generation AI system that has now claimed the top spot on LMArena.ai's popular AI text to image leaderboard. So this model is now leading all the other image generation models out there from competitors like OpenAI, and it's leading right now by a wide margin. So this leaderboard, which we've talked about a bunch, ranks AI model capabilities based on a number of factors, including which models people actually prefer to use based on human votes. So, in this particular leaderboard for these image generation models, the site doesn't just rank overall how good the model is, but also how good it is in specific categories. So, there's one category that they have titled user prompts only that basically evaluates how well these models handle real world use cases. Imagen 3 is number one in that area as well. So, Paul, with everything going on, especially news around reasoning models, like we haven't talked too much about image models in the last episode or two, but it sounds like innovation has been moving at light speed here too, especially from Google.
Yeah, I've heard lots of good things about this model. I haven't personally tested it in a little while. Dolly seems to be standing still, like OpenAI's. I'm not sure
Right.
what their plans are there, but you could just get a lot of the same generic outputs you did a year ago on Dolly. So it seems like, yeah, Google's made a lot of progress on not only image generation but video generation, like we talked about with VO. So this is their whole vision of like this multimodal model, multimodalities trained on images and videos and text, and and able to output those things. And so I do think that like we're going to see this vision really come together for Google, and maybe it is with 2.0 in the spring or before then, where you truly have this like really powerful model. I actually saw Logan Kilpatrick, I think it was on Sunday, tweeted like it was a weird tweet in response to like DeepSeek being number one
Mm,
in the App Store. He said if we packaged AI Studio as an app, it would be number one. Like,
mm.
because I think he
Okay.
was saying like there's so much amazing stuff happening within Google's AI Studio, and if you just like made all that super easy to access,
Yeah.
and it would just crush because people would realize all the value that's sitting here in these different little products. So something interesting to watch.
Yeah, that is interesting to mention because I feel like even among very savvy people in our audience, I think a lot of them forget like through AI Studio and like a couple other sandbox areas Google has, you can access a bunch of
Yeah, you can
these
play around with all those.
experimental models. Yeah.
Yeah, there are labs you can go in and test
Yeah.
stuff. Like, I think that's where VO2 is in the, I think it
I
might be in
believe
the
so.
lab.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they got all kinds of stuff in Google Labs. It's cool.
Our next topic is about Sam Altman doubling down on his mission to extend human life. So, we had referenced in our past episode a startup he funded, Biosciences. They are now launching an ambitious $1 billion fundraising round. So, this San Francisco based company was initially seeded by Altman with $180 million to develop AI powered treatments aimed at increasing human lifespan by a decade. So, they have now partnered with OpenAI to create a specialized AI model that designs proteins capable of temporarily converting regular cells into stem cells, potentially reversing the aging process. They plan to begin clinical trials this year, starting with a potential Alzheimer's treatment in Australia. They're also looking to accelerate the traditional drug development timeline rather than the typical 10 to 15 years required to bring a drug to market. They are targeting their first drug release by the end of the decade. They're pursuing three main drug candidates right now. One is a pill that restores cells' internal recycling processes. So one is a therapy to replace brain cells linked to Alzheimer's, and one is a treatment to rejuvenate blood stem cells. So the company is currently for this funding in talks with family offices, venture capitalists, sovereign wealth funds, and a major US data center provider to secure the massive compute needed for these AI models. So, Paul, kind of related to what Demis Hassabis was saying in his interview at Davos, which we covered in the last episode, definitely seems like we're seeing some big moves in AI for scientific progress.
Yeah, so I just made a note to myself, like it was kind of a joke, but human life extension is like the new rocket company for billionaires. So like, 10 years
Yeah.
ago, if you were a billionaire, you needed to be building a rocket company like SpaceX or Blue Origin. Now you need to be all in like human life extension. Seems like all these guys are talking about this. Um, so I'm back to Dario Amodei's Machines of Loving Grace thing. And
Yeah.
in that October article, he talked about biology and health. He said, my basic prediction is AI enabled biology and medicine will allow us to compress the progress that human biologists make, would have achieved over 50, 100 years in 5 to 10 years. And he talked about doubling the human lifespan. This might seem radical, but life expectancy increased almost 2 times in the 20th century from 40 to 75 years. And so it's on trend that the compressed 21st would be to double it again to 150. So
Mm,
Dario's, in October talking about living to be 150. In the
okay.
Demis interview, he talked about biology and life extension. And he said that the current understanding in biology is that 120 seems to be the natural limit, but that he would be very surprised if that is in fact the limit on human lifespan, that he
Wow.
definitely sees the ability in this generation to have people living commonly past 120. So I think part of it is these AI people see the future and see how it's being applied to advancements in biology like AlphaFold and
Yep.
chemistry. And they think of aging as a disease that's solvable. Like they don't see anything that actually prevents the rejuvenation of cells and stuff like that. So, like to them, it's not even that crazy to talk about human life extension, and so it's logical that they would want to play a part in that and live longer themselves and benefit other people. I guess so. That's a whole nother topic, man.
Yeah. No, I feel that's feels a lot like what you were trying to communicate with the point Demis made. about how good AlphaFold is at this stuff over humans. And like, it's like a billion years of PhD research. It's like, okay, like we'll see if the life extension thing is actually proven out. But the point being, these models are already capable of doing things that we couldn't even have dreamt of. So
Yeah,
why
and what
not?
Dem has talked about is, like, their next frontier is they're building virtual cells. So
Yeah.
they're actually trying to build a human cell simulation, and then once you achieve that, which he thinks they can do in the next 5 years, they took a bunch of the AlphaFold people and put them on cell creation,
Mm.
then you can actually test drugs in a simulated human cell of how they would solve things. So he thinks within 5 years, they'll have the ability to simulate human cells. And then once you have that ability, you can now run all these simulations. So he sees within a decade massive advancements because he's very confident they're going to have the ability to run these simulations within 5 years. It's wild. Like it's so crazy to think about, like the possible outcomes of this stuff.
All right, our last topic today, we wanted to quickly share, we're trying to, share practical AI use cases where we find them, either from others or stuff we're doing. So I just wanted to quickly share one use case I found for some of the like Google AI Studio tech, those experimental models that we just referenced in a previous topic. So I'll just quickly, Paul, go through this and then we can wrap this up. But really, what I was able to jump into at Google AI Studio and use some of their experimental models for was a pretty cool experiment with leveling up my speaking skills. So I do quite a few talks. Paul, you're on the road all the time doing talks. I was in San Francisco last week doing a talk, and obviously, you prep quite a bit, even for short talks. And what I found really helpful is I was able to actually turn AI into my own personal speaking coach. So I used a custom prompt and Google AI Studio and basically recorded myself practicing, uploaded the talk to Google AI Studio, the prompt basically being like, you're a speaking coach. Here's how I want you to analyze my talk. And then it went ahead and actually analyzed it for tone, pacing, delivery, and more. And the reason I did this with Google AI Studio is because you can actually upload audio and video and like a very large context window. So I was like doing like a 35-minute talk, and what's really cool is like it caught all this stuff I just never would have even been aware of. Like it time stamped my best moments. It talked about when my energy peaked. It talked about, hey, you nailed this stat or this example, and highlighted a ton of other stuff to focus on or improve. And then I was able to actually compare across different practice runs. So I'd do one, read the feedback, do it again, try to apply it, so on and so forth. So it was just a really cool, really practical, immediately useful way to use some of these tools.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I think I know you would put it on LinkedIn, which is when I saw it. Um, it so perfectly demonstrates what we always talk about. And again, going back to like the importance of AI literacy, understanding what AI is capable of enables you to then figure out ways to use it for the
Yep.
mundane things, like the repetitive data driven stuff you don't enjoy doing, but for like the creative, innovative things. Like, and that's the potential we all have, is to like find ways to use this technology in a positive way to just make us better at our job, make us enjoy our job more. It doesn't all have to be just replacing repetitive stuff and driving efficiency. It can be
Yeah.
about creativity and innovation assisted by AI. First, you got to understand that it's possible. If you didn't even know Google had an AI studio, you would never think to do this. So,
Right.
um, and I think each week that's what Mike and I try and bring, is like this really foundational knowledge so that hopefully you can go take it and do all kinds of cool, incredible things that Mike and I might not even think to mention on the podcast. And so, yeah, I think these kind of real world examples are awesome. I think it's fun for me because I see more and more people in my LinkedIn network who share stuff like this on LinkedIn. Like, hey, I did this cool thing last week with AI.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, it's inspirational for me because you just see people taking knowledge about AI and going and doing cool things. And that's the opportunity. I think once you get in any profession, any business, once you get through the fear of this stuff, and the uncertainty we all face, and you just say like, I'm just going to go use it to the best of my ability and we'll see what happens. Like figure the rest out later. You really start to get excited about what's possible, and you start, showing yourself what you can do to kind of reimagine your career. And that's what keeps us optimistic about the future.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a lot of fun to also just mess around with and be able to discover this stuff for yourself.
Yeah.
All right, Paul, that is a wrap on our second episode of today, the second episode we're releasing this week. Just a quick note for everyone. If you haven't checked out our newsletter, go to marketingaiinstitute.com/newsletter. It has all the news that we've covered today and everything we couldn't fit into the episode. And leave us a review if you can on your podcast platform of choice. We'd really, really appreciate it. Paul, thanks so much. That was a lot.
While we've been on this, I got like 4 messages from people asking me about DeepSeek. I was just gonna say, just listen to episode 133. I guess my opinion. All right. Yeah. Thanks everyone. I who knows what this week is going to bring. I can't imagine it's going to be as wild as last week, but I assume we'll be back to 1 weekly episode next week. I don't think we're going to make this a regular practice, because this is like our entire Monday has been taken up doing these podcasts. But all right, hopefully it was helpful for everyone. We will be back next week with our regular weekly episode. Thanks again. Thanks for listening to The AI Show. Visit marketingaiinstitute.com to continue your AI learning journey and join more than 60,000 professionals and business leaders who have subscribed to the weekly newsletter, downloaded the AI blueprints, attended virtual and in-person events, taken our online AI courses, and engaged in the Slack community. Until next time, stay curious and explore AI.